A severe weather alert. Hundreds of thousands of people are without power right now, and two big breaking stories emerge. A plane carrying the Michigan men's basketball team skids off the runway at Willow Run Airport after a boarding takeoff because of the wind.
But first, tragedy unfolding right now on Detroit's east side. 5 people killed and 4 injured after the wind helps a fire sweep through an apartment complex.
Good to have you with us on this extremely busy day here in Metro Detroit. DTE confirming right now nearly 500,000 DTE customers are without power because of these winds.
And it was those high winds that helped spread the fire that you just saw there. It grew so quickly that people inside couldn't get out fast enough.
Steve Garagiola live there tonight. And Steve, the fire department is saying the wind caused this as well as made it difficult to fight.
Well, absolutely. And the deputy chief seemed to indicate the wind did not start this fire, but the wind is the reason it's such a tragedy. 4 people hospitalized, 5 people killed. When we got here on the scene, the smoke was so thick you could not see 10 feet in front of you. And because of the heavy wind, it was just swirling. Well, that made it nearly impossible for firefighters to get into the building. And sadly, it did make it impossible for 4 other people to get out. The fire started at 1:30 this afternoon and quickly engulfed the entire building. 8 units in this apartment building. It spread so fast because of the wind.
You know, it's like when you light a fireplace and you use the bellows and the fire blows up. Okay, so we've got these high winds and it just drove that fire right through the building.
5 people were taken to the hospital suffering burns and smoke inhalation. Firefighters could not reach some of the apartments initially because of a wall of flames and smoke.
They were trying to get in that building, and they were just like, it's like into the mouth of the dragon. It was just horrendously hot and heavy smoke, and it was just very horrible to go into.
The danger in a wind-driven fire is that it spreads, flying embers. Half an hour after this fire is under control, a neighbor runs up to tell firefighters his house is on fire. The garage burned, but no injuries. The tragedy at this apartment complex, 4 hospitalized, but 5 people killed. Now, 4 of those 5 people killed never made it out of the building. The 5th person did come out, did not have a pulse, we're told. One was brought out the building, was revived at the hospital, but died at the hospital. So ultimately, 5 people were killed, and the wind is still really whipping. At 6 o'clock, we're going to hear from an eyewitness who says she and her neighbor tried to warn people about the fire, but unsuccessfully. Devin, back to you.
All right, Steve, we'll get back to you shortly. Now, also breaking right now, a plane carrying the Michigan men's basketball team skids off the runway at Willow Run Airport.
The charter flight was taking off and the pilot aborted late in the process. Let's get out to Tim Pamplin live at Willow Run tonight. And Tim, do we know if there are any injuries in all of this?
That's the good part of this story. The ultimate report here is that there are no serious injuries. Amazingly, as I zoom in here, you see that McDonnell Douglas MD-80 off the runway. I'll put my extender in here, we can get a little bit closer. The emergency chutes were deployed both at the front and over the wing. Now, when I arrived here about an hour and a half ago, shortly after this occurred, there were about 100, as you say, members of the U of M basketball and band were on their way to Washington, D.C. They're now hanging in a hangar over here. They've been moved from one hangar to another. They say they're going to still continue on to Washington, D.C. I didn't get a chance to speak to them. They were quickly hurried away into the hangar. But terrifying moment. Some of the pictures on social media that the members of the team and the band posted show that there's a ravine over there. The plane actually made it over a ravine and then came to stop right there. So terrifying moments out here at Willow Run Airport. 100 members of the U of M family, all said to be safe and sound, shaken up, but now going to be back on their way to DC. I don't know if they're going to go by airplane. I don't know if I would so soon. That's up to them.
Yeah.
That's the scene right now at Willow Run. Back to you guys.
Yeah, all right, Tim. A little subplot there for the Big Ten tournament. Now, the damage from across Metro Detroit has been incredible today. Our crew's been all over the place gathering video of it.
Yeah, take a look here. This was a scene at Kercheval Avenue and Grayton and Grosse Pointe Park. And as you can see there, look at that tree. It was uprooted and fell on top of a house. No word on any injuries.
Right. Let's move to Ferndale. A tree fell on the ground right off Livernois. And as you can see, crews there working on that scene, trying to get everything cleaned up.
And take a look at this video from Walled Lake, where a runaway shed made its way from someone's property to the middle of the road. As you can see, the wind just keeps propelling it forward. Yeah. The structure, it finally comes to a stop there, right there before the road. My goodness. Lots more video to see like this, folks, on clickondetroit.com.
Interesting driving challenge to try and anticipate what it's going to
yeah.
do. Exactly. And now a live look from our rather shaky sky cam at Metro Airport. Throughout the day, we've seen arriving flights having a tough time landing. Several of them have had to do what they call a go-round, so the pilot aborts the landing just before touching down. And if you're flying today, make sure you check in with the airline to make sure that everything's on time. And our resident pilot here knows what it's like to be out on even anything close to this. It makes it really challenging.
Very difficult. The go-round is a typical maneuver. It's not an emergency maneuver, but I'll tell you, on days like this, when you have wind gusts over 60 miles an hour.
Unbelievable.
I mean, that is what we would classify as a severe thunderstorm, but we didn't have a cloud in the sky, and so that made it sort of harder to stomach, I guess, with those wind gusts right now in the 50-mile-an-hour range, 52 in Pontiac, still 53 at Metro Airport. So the good news is these gusts are lower than what we were seeing earlier. The bad news is they're still going to be fast enough to cause damage, at least to the early evening hours, and that's why that high wind warning extends until 7 p.m. tonight. But as we get through the evening, you can see that the gusts are going to decrease, especially here towards 10 o'clock. They'll be down to 30 to 40 miles an hour, temperatures going into the 30s, and even though the winds subside tonight, we've got snow on the way, and we'll discuss that coming up in a few minutes, guys.
Right, Ben, so at our assignment desk today, it has been a flood all day long of phone calls about damage in from the wind.
Sure, our Paula Tutman told us at 4 o'clock she's been all over town today. Paula, it sure is a mess. You've seen a lot today.
Yeah, it really has been a mess, you guys, because we would hear that there was a tree down on one building and we'd be stopped 3 or 4 times just getting to that one location with other trees down. We also saw an awning on someone's house. I mean, really dangerous conditions. I did just get updated numbers from DTE. Numbers are going up, guys, not going down. We're at 500,000 people without power, and it's just been going up ever since this morning. At 10 a.m., there were about 30,000 power outages. Moments later, 70,000. By noon, 170,000 people throughout the metro area had no power, and barely an hour later, the number had climbed to 230,000. And the real winds had barely even gotten going.
We've been expecting this weather and predicting that this weather was coming over the last couple of days, so we've had our crews alerted and on standby and ready to go, and that's why we're already able to dispatch a good number of the outages.
Cleanup at Hillview and Sorrento. One of the first gusts of the windstorm brought down a tree onto Susie Stewart's house and power lines with it.
I jumped up and I heard my sister hollering, and I ran in her bedroom. The whole tree sitting and everything had fell down on her.
But the guys brought in to clean up the tree were working in the wind, and let's face it, the same gusts that took that tree down created issues for them too. Start with the tree fell back onto the power line as they were trying to cut it down. And then while on the roof cleaning up debris, you guessed it, a wind gust almost took one of the workers over. Is it the very definition of dichotomy or irony? Jameer Yeager does yard cleanup with his company Year Around Landscaping and was getting calls early today.
I told him I'll stop by and take a look at it. Probably not today because I don't want to be out here working in these conditions. It seems to be a little unsafe.
Not only was it too dangerous for his crew, but a tree took out one of his work trucks.
But it's still a pain, yes, because we still have to get it fixed. So it's money that has to be spent.
So I just want you to take a look at this video. 2 guys, 2 neighbors talking, just chatting. And believe it or not, that's very dangerous this evening. DTE and other officials talk to first responders. They don't even want you out right now because the issue is not just that the wind can push you around, and it can, but flying debris. It can become projectiles, and it's just not safe, particularly in a neighborhood like this where you have a lot of old and dying trees. Now, DTE workers, they are on 16-hour shifts. They are ready for this. They're prepared for this. They're out there. They're not able to necessarily give you a time when your power will be back or your neighbor's power will be back on because it's rotating. It's a constantly changing scene for them, but they are on it. They don't want you to touch down power lines. Please give them a call and be safe. This wind is really serious, guys.
Yeah.
So important about the power lines. We report way too often on people who've come across one and gotten too close.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's speaking of power, let's take a live look inside the DTE Command Center right now. Paula mentioned DTE is now at 500,000 customers. Add Consumers Energy, and you've got more than 600,000 customers right now without power as they work to try and get this back together. But of course, until the winds subside, it's going to be really tricky.
And really, the outages are scattered widely across all of Metro Detroit. Coming up at 5:30, we'll talk live to DTE officials and ask them how they plan to tackle this enormous job of trying to get people back online.
Much more to come on that throughout this next 90 minutes of news. Our other top story we're following at this hour, Dearborn police trying to figure out why a man walked into Beaumont Oakwood Hospital and set himself on fire.
This happened this afternoon inside the hospital's lobby. Our Sean Lay spoke to the man's family. He's live at Detroit Receiving Hospital tonight, where that man was taken to the burn unit. Sean, so many questions here. Is there any indication on a motive here? How's the guy doing?
A dual motive here, Kimberly. One, suicide, according to police sources. The other has a domestic violence type tinge to it. Here's why. The man walks into the hospital today covered in gasoline, carrying gasoline, and it appears he was trying to make it up to a room where his wife was being treated. The man who set himself on fire is 60 years old, a married father of 2. His son, speaking to Local 4, was clearly shaken. Dearborn police at his door shortly after the disturbing incident.
Just started asking questions about what was going on, said that, you know, he was set on fire and that he was transferred to Detroit.
He says his father is on disability with a back injury. His wife, however, is also being treated at Beaumont Hospital Dearborn, and that's where he set himself on fire.
There wasn't really any clues or anything. I mean, this is completely out of the blue. This is out of nowhere.
The man, we're told, walked into the hospital carrying a big clue, a 2-liter soda bottle. Police and hospital sources say was filled with gasoline, and he reeked of gasoline. Security was called. The man was followed to the lobby and got onto an elevator, telling employees that he was a vendor. They wouldn't let him close the elevator doors to get any further. As security arrived, he set himself on fire. Police and the hospital say it was a domestic incident, but was he on his way to his wife's room?
So this situation was extremely scary. There was smoke. There was fire extinguisher exhaust, there were burned items, so it was a scary scene.
In fact, the hospital president says one of the own employees there at the hospital had to put this guy out with a fire extinguisher. Devin and Kimberly, he is being treated here at the burn unit at Detroit Receiving Hospital. I'm told by sources he has burns to 30% of his body, but he is alert and talking to investigators at this hour. Live in Detroit, Sean Lay, Local 4.
Think about the flammability of things in a hospital.
Yep, oxygen tanks, all sorts of things.
It would have been disastrous. All right, Sean. A day of marches and protests all across the country.
Ahead here at 5, the worldwide push to recognize the massive role women have.
And a daring rescue in an overnight apartment fire. New tonight, we'll hear from the heroes who rushed to help children to safety. Karen?
One of their own is murdered, so who does the Wayne State University Police Department cope? How do they move on and still honor Sergeant Colin Rose? I'll take you inside that department where you can hear from the officers themselves.
All right, Karen, and we continue to gather new information from Detroit's east side, where a fire at this apartment complex has left 5 people dead and 4 others injured. We're told the wind made the fire grow far too fast for people to escape.
And we are keeping an eye on damage from the wind all across Metro Detroit tonight, including damage to the boats along Grosse Ile. Right now, Consumers Energy and DTE telling us more than 600,000 customers are without power. It'll continue to be covered right here on Local 4 when we come back.
New at 6.
She was strangled to death and left by the side of a local freeway back in 1975. Investigators finally know who she is, but can they get her justice? New at 6, what's being done to find Darlene McKenzie's killer?
Also, we've got an update on the guy seen in this video stealing money for the tab and tip at a Buffalo Wild Wings.
But first, police say this man caught on video is a cop killer. The Local 4 defenders first broke this story last night, showing a man trying to cross Grand River near Rosa Parks. It happened about 10 minutes after Sergeant Colin Rose was shot in the head and left to to die. Today, the pain is still raw and very real for officers on the Wayne State Police Department, as adjusting to life without Sergeant Colin Rose is very difficult.
First officer killed in the line of duty in 50 years. Defender Karen Drew was allowed special access inside the department and has more on what she found. Karen.
Well, Devin and Kimberly, it is still hard. They think of their slain brother in blue every day. But at the same time, these officers are still very focused on their job, keeping campus and the surrounding area safe. They say that's what Sergeant Rose would have wanted. Heading out on assignment, officers start their day with Sergeant Colin Rose never far from their mind. A reminder written on the dry erase board, gone but not forgotten.
You know, in the beginning, it was overwhelming. It was difficult for myself and a lot of other officers that were, working that night. You replay a lot of the events of that evening.
Officer Yusuf Jito says the tragedy has brought the department closer together.
The thing that's helped was talking to other officers, finding out what they were going through.
There's constant reminders of him.
Investigator Chris Powell was a co-worker and a close friend.
I was one of his training officers, and it was a lasting friendship from those first few days together in the car.
This is a small department where this particular officer, Sergeant Rose, was very engaged with the officers.
Chief Anthony Holt says he feels a sense of responsibility.
His parents told me, two things I need you to do. I need you to make sure he gets his master's degree. I need you to keep him safe.
Sergeant Rose's family says their son loved his job, the department, and had great respect for the chief, always volunteering to represent the department at other officers' funerals around the country.
He would call Chief and say, "Chief, we're going to go to," and Chief would let him go.
This is an officer who will go to the school across the street here, take off his gun belt, and get in foot race. I had this school across the street where 40 kids came over, and they wrote poems about Officer Rose. They were in tears downstairs in the briefing room.
We knew what a great kid we had, and we just didn't realize how many people he touched.
A loss felt department-wide every single day.
The only thing is in time.
These officers reporting for duty, gearing up, and going out on patrol. And pausing to honor their fallen comrade.
It's tough every day. We've moved on, but at the same time we haven't forgotten.
Well, the chief says they are making some changes in the department as well, attempting to have regular a shift for officers in certain situations in certain areas, have regular backup for them. So what happened to Sergeant Rose won't happen to another officer. I'm Karen Drew, Local 4 Defenders.
All right, Karen, now back to the story that is perhaps dominating your view of what's going on today.
Yeah, really.
It's just everywhere.
Ben's forecast was right on point. You've been telling us, but I don't know if I was really ready for it, even though you've been warning us all week.
Yeah, we talked about it when the sun's out. There are no storms in the forecast. It's just, even if we tell you it's coming, it's hard to sort of get your brain to wrap around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still got to be on our guard for the next few hours. And we can see that the fastest gusts, we're just on the western edge of that in the purple shades there. And you can see it's going to slide off to the east tonight. So we will see those gusts diminish considerably as we head towards daybreak. Tomorrow, winds only at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Wish we could have gotten some of that today. Obviously not much to look at on radar, but you look at all of these reports of damage and wind that are coming in, especially this one that we got in earlier. This is from Milan. 2 semi-trucks overturned between Ann Arbor and Dundee. And as far as the wind gusts go, the fastest one that we've picked up so far was right at the airport, and that was 68 miles per hour. Obviously faster than a severe thunderstorm threshold, at least the lower end, but you're approaching hurricane force. That starts at 74 miles an hour, so very close to that. And so why did this happen today? Well, up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, actually about a couple thousand feet, winds are 70 miles an hour. We see this all the time. They just don't often get these speeds pulled down to the surface, but that's what happened today. And the sunshine, while nice, actually may have played a role because it made things a little bit more unstable. Parcels started to rise, others started to sink, and that sort of motion started pulling down these very fast wind speeds towards the surface. Now, the trees and the houses down here, they sort of are a little bit of friction, so that's why these gusts are not quite as fast as some of those wind speeds that we see in the upper levels. But cold front also played a part in that. We saw a lot of that damage when the cold front came through right around midday, and we're still getting reports of that being an issue as we get into tonight. So the windy conditions are going to die down. We will be seeing those winds diminish. Cold temperatures are going to be the story as we go forward, and there's going to be some snow. A little bit. We're talking less than an inch, but it's mainly going to be in our south zone as we get into tomorrow evening. Beyond that, temperature is going to stay below average all the way through the upcoming forecast. So let's look at the snowfall totals here. Hard to believe we're in the middle of March and we're looking at snow totals, but yeah, here we go. It's not going to be impressive, but a couple tenths here downriver, and this is going to be in the evening hours tomorrow. South zone, you'll see most of it, still less than an inch. Highest numbers are going to be out here in Lenawee County at about 6-7 tenths. And then in our west zone, you can see where that snow line just pretty much cuts off north of Washtenaw County. Not going to see a whole lot up towards Fenton and Flint. Could see a couple tenths around Ann Arbor and pretty much nothing here in our north zone. A lot of goose eggs there. That snow is going to remain further south. So as far as temperatures go tonight, we'll wrap it up at 29. The gusts are going to stay around 50 miles an hour until sunset. Then the winds diminish considerably as we go into tomorrow. High temperatures at 41 degrees, and that snow starts rolling in here in the evening hours. 7-day forecast is all cold, even into the middle of next week. And guys, even though those gusts are going to diminish tonight, once the sun goes down, if there are still down trees, down power lines, that could still be an issue for folks that are not expecting it on the roads or even just walking around.
In fact, situation keeps worsening. We've just heard from DTE Energy. They got another 50,000 homes that are now without power. And as we mentioned earlier, until the wind really dies down, tough for them to get the upper hand on this. Yeah, so we've got now getting close to 750,000 customers between DTE and consumers without power at this hour.
That's a lot.
Yep.
All right, we'll have more to come on the storms in just a bit, but first it takes hundreds of trucks and the work goes round the clock until it's done. We'll show you the really cool thing happening at Little Caesars Arena right now.
But first, he is going away for a very long time. A girls soccer coach convicted of the ultimate betrayal of the kids he was entrusted to help.
A former youth soccer coach in Warren will spend the next 31 years in prison for sexually assaulting one of his players. 33-year-old Jason Nemas was convicted of criminal sexual conduct after a 12-year-old girl testified she was assaulted during a sleepover in 2015. Nemas was back in court today where a judge sentenced him to at least 31 years in prison.
Little Caesars Arena is a big symbolic step closer to its opening.
Concrete was poured all day today to create the foundation for the ice rink. The rink is being built first, while the Pistons court will be placed over the rink once the arena officially opens. After the rink is complete, construction crews will begin installing seats as the arena continues to be on track for its grand opening in September. How exciting.
New at 5:30.
The worst of the three condemned homes here in Fraser. Obviously, people can't go in. That's why you see that robot there. We'll tell you how Michigan State Police are helping today.
And investigators looking into what caused a fire on Detroit's west side that had people throwing their children out of these windows. And unfortunately, because of the way it burned, they think that it could be arson.
As this dangerous windstorm hits Metro Detroit. This is a live look from inside the DTE Energy Command Center. We'll talk to them about the monumental task ahead to get everyone's power back up and running, back on the grid. That's ahead here at 5:30. Stay with us.
It's dinner time.
We start things off here at 5:30 with our severe weather alert, the extreme winds that are causing damage all over town tonight. We're now at 550,000 DTE Energy customers without power. We've got thousands of wires down. How long before the power comes back on? We'll try and answer that in this next 30 minutes. And Ben has been tracking this high threat of wind for days now.
It has been a really rough couple of hours. Things seem to be tying down a little bit.
Yeah, we're sort of on the back edge of what we're watching for, but we've got a few more hours where we still could be seeing damage. And this map keeps growing. These are all the reports of damage and wind gusts that we've had across the area. Of course, a lot of these are trees and power lines, but you get up here into parts of Genesee County, vinyl siding getting stripped off of buildings, and also a roof blown off, not of a house, but off of a commercial building. And this was about the time that cold front came through, about midday. So this has really had some impact, and it's been such a prolonged event. We started with these gusts that really ramped up in the morning, and we've still got a few hours to go before that high wind warning expires at 7 p.m. So we're going to take the forecast still with those gusts in 50-mile-an-hour range in spots for the next couple hours. But then once the sun goes down and we start getting into the 10 o'clock hour, you'll see these gusts really start to die down. And by midnight, we'll be out of the woods. But we've still got some snow to discuss in the 7-day forecast coming up in a few minutes, guys.
All right, Ben. And they are blaming the high winds for a house fire now in southwest Detroit, which consumed a two-family flat after the wires snapped, arced, and then hit the home.
It happened at a home on Martin and Devereaux Streets. Let's get right to Mara McDonald. She's live downtown this evening. And Mara, neighbors stepped in to save the day.
Karen, let me tell you something. These people should be so grateful for neighbors that A, pay attention, and B, act when there are only minutes to spare. Take a look.
Firefighters got there as fast as they could and dumped water on the blaze, but the high winds and snapped lines managed to torch this southwest Detroit home in a matter of minutes.
It was very scary. I mean, you know, the wind was so strong and it was just blowing everywhere, and the fire caught the house on fire really quick.
Edwin Gomez was outside getting something out of his truck when he heard the wire snap and hit his neighbor's home. He ran across the street to alert them.
I went around to the front of the house to see if there was anybody inside the house, and she heard the knocking and she says, "What's wrong, Mr. Gomez?" I says, "Your house is on fire."
His neighbor works afternoons and was still asleep. His warning managed to get her and her family out as the high winds spread the fire to the entire back of the house in seconds.
Well, it's okay. I mean, we pretty much lost everything, but as long as my mom and my family are okay, I don't care.
Back here live, Mr. Gomez's quick actions allowed this family to get a couple key things out of their home, but after that, everything else is a total loss. We're live downtown tonight. I'm Mara McDonald, Local 4.
Yeah, all right, Mara. So the question for thousands of families tonight, when will they get the power back on? We're joined now by Heather Rivard from the DTE Command Center. Heather, we mentioned earlier that the totals of those losing without their power was still going up a little over 500,000 homes right now. Is that still where it stands, or has it changed?
Yes, we've had a total of nearly 600,000 customers impacted by this storm, making it the second largest in our company's history. Roughly about 560,000 without power right now.
Wow, second worst that you've ever dealt with. As we looked at the damage that we're covering, it's kind of scattered all over the place. Is that the same thing with the outages, or are you finding those more concentrated in some areas rather than others?
Yeah, we are seeing the same thing with the outages scattered generally across our entire service territory right now.
And how many dangerous situations do we have where there might be live wires down in certain areas?
We've had reported over 2,000 wire down cases since the storm began. That is our #1 priority right now. We have several crews and field personnel out in the field working on fixing those situations, making the situation safe, clearing out those hazards.
Of course, with people without power, can't necessarily follow along as well on television for improvements and when they might expect things to come back on. What's the best way? Obviously, people can still have cell phone service. What's the best way for people to stay advised on what the situation might be in their neighborhood?
The best information is being fed right now through our Twitter feed as well as our Facebook website. We also have a mobile app. We have been experiencing intermittent problems with the mobile app throughout the day, but the stability of that app is coming back on, and folks should be able to use that to check both the estimated restoration time when it becomes available, as well as the outage cause information.
And before I let you go quickly, I'm curious as to when that other time was when we had an outage even worse than this one. Do you happen to know?
Yeah, it was in 1991, and it was an outage number of customers of over 680,000 customers impacted.
Heather, really appreciate the updates. We'll let you get back to work. I know you're juggling a lot. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You bet. Karen?
All right, and that storm has caused damage throughout Metro Detroit and Grosse Ile tonight. Some boats laid up for winter actually topple over thanks to those extreme winds. Tim Pamplin was there to check out exactly what happened.
The winds howling up the Detroit River have started toppling yachts at the Water's Edge Marina here on Grosse Ile. This is along the western edge of Grosse Ile. Further down the marina, there's a yacht, a sail yacht. Here's some video. It has also blown off of its stands. Now, some yacht owners are here surveying the damage, hoping that their vessel is safe. But again, 30-mile-an-hour sustained winds with 60-mile-an-hour gusts, I'm being told by our local 4 weather department, hitting along the shores of Grosse Ile, taking out some of these very expensive yachts. That's the scene right now on Grosse Ile. Tim Pamplin, local 4.
Of course, we'll keep updating everything going on with this extreme wind throughout the next 30 minutes and online at clickondetroit.com. Now to brand new developments into that apartment fire we first told you about this morning.
So intense that parents were throwing their kids out of windows. As Nick Monticelli reports, the focus is now on what caused the fire. There are signs that point to arson.
Good evening. Those burn patterns of the way the fire moved is indicative inside of the hallway. The investigators immediately finding that the fire was mainly in that area, spreading through the hallways before really getting into the apartments. That's why they think this could be intentional.
Everything is gone. Everything. And we had brand new everything. Everything is gone.
When a fire claims where you live and what you own, shock is the first thing to set in.
I don't know what to do. My kids ain't got no clothes on. My girl ain't got no shoes on. They had to jump out windows.
At the same time, though, you are trying to process what happened, which will be more difficult, as fire investigators believe this fire at the Infinity Park Apartments was intentionally set, especially because most of the damage was in the hallways.
We've got our arson dog pasta coming in to go ahead and smell for accelerants, but the entire hallway was involved in fire, not the individual apartments. So we're kind of saying absolutely it's suspicious right now.
And because the hallways were filled with flames and smoke, families were trapped in their apartments.
I had to scream for them to throw their kids out the window, because there was no way they was going to be able to walk out their front door.
I had no other choice. There was no other way out. I had to.
The parents literally had to drop the babies out to us to catch. We had to catch them out the window. We didn't want them hitting the ground.
Everyone, including about 8 children thrown from the windows, are okay. But what happens next is still up in the air, as residents tried getting answers from the owner about where to stay.
She got someone to stay. I don't. Then you, man. Nothing. Nothing. They're telling us nothing. She told me to go stay with a family member. See them in the morning. What am I going to do tonight?
On Detroit's west side, Nick Monticelli, Local 4.
An important note here, the fire marshal says some of the smoke detectors were working, but because the fire was mainly in the hallway, the detectors in the apartments didn't help.
Marches and rallies around the nation today highlighting the role women play in society and what the world might be like without them. Today, the National Strike Movement, A Day Without a Woman, coincides with International Women's Day. The strike aims to draw attention to inequities working women face compared to men, from wage disparity to harassment to job insecurity. Many women are showing solidarity by skipping work or school and putting their pocketbooks away to make that point.
We certainly hope you're going to join us tonight as we broadcast live this evening from Flint.
That's right. 8 o'clock this evening, we present Failure in Flint. The crisis continues. Our consumer investigator Hank Winchester joins us from the farmers market in Flint this evening with what you can expect tonight. Good evening, Hank.
Karen, Devin, good evening to both of you. In fact, you'll be in this position tonight starting at 8 o'clock. The farmers market here in downtown, it's the popular hangout for people during the day. Think of it as our Campus Martius. And right upstairs is the office of Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha, the pediatrician that helped expose this big problem, a problem that is still affecting people here every day. Flint, 3 years into the crisis, the water is improving, but people still told to rely on filters and bottled water. No one, not even the mayor of Flint, expected it to last this long.
Because this had not happened before, we had to just wait and see how long it was going to take. Nobody could really tell us. So what they thought would be a date for, oh, the pipes will be recoated, really didn't happen.
Tonight at 8 p.m., join us as we take an in-depth look at the crisis in Flint, the crisis that is still causing huge problems for the people living here.
If you could pick up and move, would you move?
Yeah.
quickly.
We're in the process of figuring out how we could get some money to help us to relocate outside of Flint, Michigan.
Help Me Hank, The Defenders, Dr. McGeorge, Devin and Kimberly live from Flint, talking with struggling families, revealing the latest on the criminal investigation, and showing you how the city is improving. But the harsh reality is revealed. Life in Flint may never be back to normal.
We don't want Flint to be forgotten because we're still here struggling and fighting for what we need.
Failure in Flint. The crisis continues. A WDIV special beginning tonight at 8 o'clock live here from Flint. We'll have more in a live report tonight also at the top of the hour. For now, Karen, Devin, back to you.
We'll see you soon, Hank. Well, what will his father say about this?
Ahead here at 5:30, the son of a key figure in the last election under arrest for what he did at a political rally. Jason.
Progress in Fraser at the site of the sinkhole on 15 Mile Road.
We hope to have these homes demolished very soon.
But before that can happen, work has to be done. We'll tell you why these robots are on the scene today.
Treat yourself. New at 6.
A man who murdered a 21-year-old Troy woman and then lied to her family gets his punishment. New at 6, hear what the victim's loved ones had to say about the killer in court today.
Today, the Michigan State Police bomb squad was called to the Fraser sinkhole site. Perhaps not for what you think.
Jason Colthorpe was there today as they went on a special mission to help homeowners who've lost their homes.
What Michigan State Police are doing today, they've taken a couple of robots from their trucks here, wheeled them around here to go into this, one of the 3 condemned homes here in Fraser. This one being the worst, where people could not get back inside to check on their valuables. And that's what these robots are doing, going through the garage into the house to itemize everything in here. The MSP bomb squad sharing their robots to help the people whose homes suffered the most damage in the sewer drain collapse on 15 Mile Road in Fraser.
Very versatile. You can, just like a person's arms, hands, things like that. We can open doors, carry things out, all those types of things.
What's happened here, devastation, and you just look at a building project when the ground's laid, all of a sudden the beams are up and then the brick is up. It's progress, and that's what today is more progress. That's what next week in awarding this bid is going to be more progress.
What's in there is a lifetime of valuables these families will never get back. That, along with the value of their homes, are part of the $1 million Macomb County has budgeted for these 3 families.
We've made an appraisal of each of the 3 homes, and we're making these offers to these individuals. When the government condemns a home, they actually have to pay 125% of the marketable value, which I'm fine with.
The county is also about ready to award the contract for fixing the entire area here, a job that should be done around Thanksgiving.
What's happened here, devastation, and you just look at a building project when the ground's laid, all of a sudden the beams are up and then the brick is up. It's progress, and that's what today is more progress. That's what next week in awarding this bid is going to be more progress.
Once these robots are done going through this house today, that house and the other one behind it and the one behind me here will all be cleared for demolition. That'll be the next step here in Fraser. Jason Colthorpe, Local 4.
Macomb County says the work there remains an around-the-clock effort.